Hi guys, just wanted to do a video real quick to show you guys how the Lords actually are playing in the Lord's War, since I have been asked a few times by various people in the kingdom. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's the folder for the Lord's War, for the overall game that is going on. Everybody has access to this folder, the Lord's War system, which shows you the various rules of how the game is played. Reading this one right here, the Lord's Rules document, will actually get you pretty good insight into how the game is run on their aspect. But showing you physically what some of those folks see. Let's take a look here. So this is what I do in between the games each time on everybody in order to update. This isn't super important, but this is how a Lord's turn is done. First thing we do is we get in contact at a scheduled time. I ask them what secret word was for the week, and they make a guess at that for their points. We then go over the previous week's actions, somewhat in detail, what they did at different parks. If there's anything I've got in my notes that they need to be let know of, that's there. We go over the weekly event that's going to happen this following week, so the week that's coming up. That way they know what they're in for that week. The next thing is army changes. That's where we make changes to who's enlisted, who's not enlisted, and what they're being paid. Then we go over any payouts the Lord may need to make in order to prevent players from having to travel super long distances to get paid by Lords, or having the Lords travel in order to physically hand coins to players when they make payments behind the scenes. They tell me here, and I send a message to the Masters of Coin to basically pay it out. Works like a bank. Then I asked the Lords what park they're going to for the weekend to record it. Haven't been great about this step. Recently added it to my list to make sure it would happen. Uh, Next we go spell casting, so they can use any spells that they want using the mana they have. You'll have to look at the Lord's War rules once again in here for the Lords in order to know what those spells are. Then we do the actions for their turn. They get 7 actions per turn in which they act on a map. That we do all their actions first, and then after all their actions are completed, we do a build phase for the turn where we put the buildings on the actual map. So let's take a look a little bit here. Each one of these folders, Belden, Jufro, Kenshin, and Conrad, is only shared with each of those members. Inside of one of those folders, it'll look something like this. I'm going to go into my fake example folder here. They've got a map and a resources counter. The map is pretty simple. It's a grid used on an Excel sheet. This is from the perspective of Orange Player. This map has been scrambled, and several of the buildings have been changed and relabeled in order to not be accurate so that no information can be garnered from this video. But essentially, this is what one player might see from their perspective, what they've discovered, where buildings are, what other players are doing. If they were to look at the world map, what I see, they would see something like this, where it has the whole view, everything that's going on. As well as I formally had some neutral things, but most of those have been taken. Um, Once they take their turns and they've performed that, they build their buildings, which generate their revenue. Lords kind of have a sheet that they look at that gives them an overview of everything of what's going on in their domain. It's this resources sheet. These would typically have numbers on the Lord sheet. I have them deleted for this example, but that's the various resources that they spend and use to do their actions. Once again, you'll have to check the Lord's document if you want to know what they use those resources on and what they gain or lose from them, the risk. Reports is a section where I let them know important details between the weeks. Basically, notes I don't want to forget when we're going over things. A lot of the time, I include which people did intel missions for you so that you know who's acting and not acting in your spies, what happened during the weekly battle games the previous week, just little notes like that. When you guys collect intel as spies, we kind of accumulate it based on the buildings they have that passively generate intel, as well as what the players do on those weekly event sheets. They get a total. That total gives players information like knowing what the other player's standing is, that's the victory condition, knowing a resource generation or total amount, so they'll either know what number's in this column for the other player, or they'll know how many per turn they actually generate. Other useful information. It's random what they get here. It's done on a chart that actually is a dice roll that gives them these two columns based on their intel. Dirty Laundry is another feature Lords get that they can use during their actions phase, where they basically lower the standing or victory number of one of the other Lords. Apart from that, when the Lords take an action on the map, like let's say that player yellow here wanted to take a force from here and investigate here, he would spend 3 transport. The maximum distance you can move from a controlled zone, which yellow controls the zones that are yellow, is 3. So he would move to here. This point on the map would be revealed, which is Q12. Q12. He would get it revealed as well as all other squares around it and the squares that he transported, in order to get to that destination. So basically he would get to see this. He'd then spend an action to turn this from, it looks like it was a forest, so formerly it was green, like that. So he would take an action basically to move, reveal it, and then an action to conquer it, which would make it his. Then he could, during his build phase, he would be able to actually put that building that's on there. Pretty simple on that one. Each action they take would go on to a previous week's, oh, what did I call them? Event sheet. Just show you a real quick example of what one of those event sheets look like. This basically has a rundown of what happened the previous week, what the combat game is like that's going to go out to the parks, what the non-combat game I'm working on goes out to the parks, each one of their actions, which these are dated enough that this shouldn't help anybody, but each one of their actions that they took on their 7 actions, remember when they save it that they get an extra one. Scroll farther down, I can see each one of the code words, as well as the category is now listed underneath this in italics. This one's pretty old, so it doesn't have the current format. What parks they were going to. Clearly this week I didn't know what everyone was going to. And then the intel for the non-combat. This list is a lot longer now as more people have signed up. As you reveal the words, I unbold your name. The left-hand side is if you're loyal to someone, you'll get a name and asterisk, otherwise it would say neutral. The right-hand side is how many intel points you gained, which is what goes into that pool that gets added up so that the lords get these various things here. That's essentially how this game has been going. That's how it's run in the background. Building the time that's being taken on it for primarily is going into building like the various event weeks, the battle games that have come out for all of the parks, the spy missions that we've had come out. Um, a lot of that, the magic items. It's just a lot of stuff that you got to put together week to week. The last thing I did want to show everybody, and this is just kind of a bragging point to end the video with, the Lord's War event. This is the master document. I believe we are at 32 pages, and I have not even started writing in this section just yet. So that is where we are. I hope you all enjoyed the little background view and how we're doing the Lord's War.